So I will entertain questions. We will be using that type of platform to reach out to students over the summer to remind them about enrollment activities or allow them to interact with Flick differently. It was really a great product that we were able to dive into thanks to marketing being able to get a larger Canva account. So it's lovely to be able to cross work like that.
Questions for Sarah?
So, Sarah, Steve here. First of all, wonderfully creative. It really is. And I'm just curious. It really does seem like FLCC stands alone. Do you find other community colleges have really kind of met your standard, if you will?
I do think FLCC is a little bit ahead of the curve. I meet with my peers often, and a lot of them have some of these pieces, but not all of them. I think timely care, we are one of the only ones to have timely care, and we are one of only 3 community colleges that have the chatbot currently. And those 2 pieces are really being leveraged. And then the 2 folks that have the chatbot or timely care do not have Starfish. So they're having to do a lot of back end work to mirror things together that I think are not going to be productive in the long run. So I do think FLCC has a lot more supports that we just need to finally get connected and talking together. And maybe this little thing called COVID could just kind of take a back seat so we can start really focusing on our students' experience.
Sure. And in those interactions with your colleagues, have you been able to glean anything that might be on your wish list in terms of in the near future?
Time would be great, so that we could, really do the deep dive. But I think right now we're poised to have almost everything we need to really start to maybe change the trajectory of students' experience at Finger Lakes. I'm really excited about the upcoming year, and I think we're going to really see some retention efforts bear fruit.
Thanks for your fine work. Appreciate it.
Other questions for Sarah? Well, I've always got questions on this subject because this really gets me excited. I know back in the old days we did like a climate survey, and we did several other. We did a kind of an analysis of students who had left and what issues they had. Do these tools help to kind of push us in the direction that we've seen experience that we've had problems? For instance, with students that have dropped out for certain reasons or not succeeded for certain reasons that they've indicated in those surveys. Do these tools help to almost serve as like the canary in the coal mine?
Yes.
To help us? Is that something, it's going to take time, I imagine, but are we working toward that?
I'm going to let Sarah answer, but yes.
I was going to say, Deborah, I think can answer this one. but I do say yes. I really do think it's just figuring out which are the predictive analysis to give us that kind of forethinking to do the interventions. But I'll let Deborah add.
Yeah, so I think we have a good sense now of how the tools work. And there are 2 really key things that have to happen at this point, which Sarah's going to talk about some of this next time, so I don't want to take away from that. But some of that is making sure that the interventions that are associated with each tool are timed appropriately, and that the data that they can yield has a standard operating procedure connected with it so it can get in the right hands. And in some cases that's already sort of baked in, but it isn't always like co-associated with the other tools, right? So there's sort of a landscape that we need to pull together there and work through. And I think we're poised to do like version 1 of that in the next year, and then you tweak it from there, right? That's really the canary in the coal mine piece. That's really this intake form is telling us this about these students. And so now these students are, we know this about them, and we're going to cohort them in the chatbot so that we can follow them better through those data. And we're going to make sure that we connect with if they flag in timely MD. So things like that, when you just the processes and procedures that are connected with that for the data as it's used operationally. And then the second part of it is that those data tell us something about decision making over time. And I don't want to say it's more powerful, because changing an individual student's life is probably the most powerful thing we do as an institution. But the ability to really see the bigger trends of what that might mean for structural change, that there's a lot of potential. And that takes us looking at the data over time and the data together. And we'll work on that over the next year too. But I think we're in a good position to start to do that now.
That is, that's
George, I have a question. This is Joan. Either Sarah or Deborah. Now that we're getting such good input, can we kind of estimate, or do you have a feel how long it takes to get back to a student? I mean, once you realize that there may be an issue, how quickly you can get back to a student to see if you can mediate it? We're not really at that place yet.
I think there's a couple of answers. The chatbot we are monitoring pretty quickly, like within 24 hours. And so when those in the advisement survey, what we found was 77 students in the first 36 hours said they had questions about registering. So ACTS literally started doing phone calls within 72 hours of a student's response. Timely care, we respond and reach out within the next business day. So when we get some information from a student that, they visited for Talk Now, which is, crisis line, we reached out the next business day. If not, sometimes Saturdays and Sundays my staff work, but I try to get them not to. But sometimes they're reaching out that fast. Progress surveys or information that is provided on midterm grades, we have a scaffolding already designed that it might be as quick as 12 hours, and it might be more like 72, depending on when the survey was done and kind of what it said. But those are the pieces that we're putting together too. How quickly are things, how are we getting the information? What can we do with it? And then how can we respond to it faster? So you're asking the same questions we're asking.
Okay, thank you. But it sounds like already it's in a very timely fashion. I mean, if you're getting back to somebody sometime in 24 hours, 12 hours, maximum 72 hours, that's really very good. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Trustee Mahaley? You're on mute.
Apologies. 2 years into this, you would think we would learn. Thank you for the presentation. I love the connection among all of these tools and the ability to use them through Starfish. My assumption is this is only going to increase for everyone's benefit. My thought, one, I'm not sure how many people are involved in responding to this. And my thought is that we're going to need more people possibly in order to respond. Do you have any thoughts about where the logistics of this might be going and what we might need to do in order to continue to make this a success, say within the next 1 to 3 years?
Can I make that part of next month's presentation? Because
Yes.
I think it aligns and I'm not really sure I have an answer tonight.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yep.
Great question. Other questions? What I will say, Dr. Nye, this is like talked about a coal mine. This is the beginning of a gold mine. I think it's absolutely tremendous that that the staff is moving in this direction. Having the predictive analytics, I can't think of. That's been something nobody's been able to do very well in higher education. So hats off. And I guess the other question I had as I was going down a Starfish is not entirely student driven, it's also faculty driven. And do we see rates of participation by faculty there and adoption by them? They often know, sometimes before the student knows, that there's trouble.
Answer that. Good evening. Faculty are using it, and we make small but positive steps in the right direction every semester, every year. So we're getting there. I think Ryan told me there was about 56 or 60% of our faculty using Starfish to raise flags. That aspect of Starfish has gone quite well. What we're working on with faculty as well is to put notes in with conversations about that they've had with students so that there's a record for that. And so we're moving in the right direction with that as well. It takes a little cajoling, but we're getting there. And the other area that faculty use Starfish is for advising notes when they meet with students to tell them what to take in the following semester or future semesters, plural. Faculty are putting in their information there.
Trustee Cushman, two things. With Starfish, we have, even though when Cassie's saying those numbers, that's one of the higher rates in SUNY in terms of the usage. But when you said a gold mine, I really have to highlight that or amplify that, using a Middle States term. And that is, I have never seen Sarah Whiffen so happy in almost 6 years as I was about 2 weeks ago talking about this same subject with her in her office, about how excited she is about how these tools can really do some wonderful things. And so seeing her that excited was like, that's the true canary in the coal mine for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Any final questions for Sarah on this? Sarah, thank you so much. Tremendous presentation.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
We'll move on to a resolution to approve grant professional association administrative appointment to Karen Fisher. Dr. Orlon.
Yeah, thanks. So, is the camera working?
I can get it.
Okay, so I have this long memo that we have to write to recommend for administrative appointment, which has been duly written and submitted about Karen. And I have it up here, and I could read that all to you. But instead, I really just want to tell you about Karen and how simply fantastic she is, and how truly, truly grateful I am to have her on my team and as a part of this college community. And I have to take these off because they're for reading, and now I can't see any of you, and it made me feel like I was gonna pass out. So one of the things that you might not know about Karen, and which is not in this memo, is that Karen has been a part of the FLCC community for almost 20 years. She has been an adjunct here, teaching psychology and sociology at the Geneva Center, at Newark, at the main campus, online, in all these different modalities. And she understands this campus like nobody else. And several years ago, when Dr. and I, I'm gonna say recruited, there are days I don't use that word, recruited me to come join him in this little adventure that we call cabinet and said, you know, I think we need this new division, and I think we gotta do more with data, and we gotta do more with data-driven decision making, and I need your help. And I thought, oh my goodness, we need more help, and I'm not sure where I'm gonna get that. And I was thinking about who could I find who could come help us on short notice to go down a journey that didn't really have an end, that we didn't know what it was going to be about. And I thought of Karen. And I knew Karen because I was a faculty member in social science where she had been an adjunct. So I had had a chance to see how smart she was and how great she was with data, but more than that, how much she understood how to think about problems that involve people, because that's what we do in APCI. We're taking all this data and we're looking at it and we're producing it, but it's data that tells stories about human beings. So if you don't understand human beings, you can't tell data stories. And you add to that, and you might have heard me talk about this before, that we have a slightly complicated data infrastructure here at FLCC. It doesn't always work exactly the way it's supposed to. And Karen is amazing because she brings all of the people together and she gets them to solve these problems and talk through it and figure it out, whether it's technical, whether it's methodological, or whether it's just figuring out what it is we're trying to do. Like all of this great stuff Sarah was just talking about, Karen will be the engine that helps make that data stories really happen. And we are so, so lucky to have her. I don't think we get to see all that work, right? We see the end result, you see all these great things. Our colleague Nicole is here representing Karen because she couldn't be here today. And you all know about all the work we've all put into making those beautiful data reports. But it's the collaboration and the stories that make it real, and that is Karen. And she has the heart for the work and she has the mind for the work, and we are very lucky. So it is my absolute pleasure and with a great deal of pride that I recommend Karen Fisher for permanent appointment here at FLCC to all of you, Board of Trustees, virtually and here in person. So thank you very much. And I do believe Karen is on the WebEx up there in the top corner. So Karen, we're really happy to have you.
Wow.
And if anyone has any questions, of course, I'm happy to answer them. So thank you.
I don't know how to follow that. Any questions of Dr. Orloff on Karen Fisher? Karen, this is that's quite a ringing endorsement. I don't know if we've heard one
All true.
quite as strong. Thank you, and now we'll move to a strategic thought presentation with the National Conference for Undergraduate Research presentation. Professor Hewlett, put you on, and if you might introduce your students,
I
we're
will.
excited to have them.
Should I, is this where I stand in this space?
Yeah, I can put the camera back up.
All right. I thought maybe it was just gonna be the back of my head.
No, it's magic.
Yeah.
It's find you wherever you go.
So thank you. For those that don't know me, I'm Jim Hewlett, professor of biology, and I have with me Jessica, who is our project manager, 3 students, Matt, Layla, and Chelsea, and Demi, who's on the call. You will see, yeah, there she is, waving. And what they're going to just talk to you about briefly here is some work that they've been doing, and it's sort of a complicated collaboration between a grant that we have here, the Northeast Biomanufacturing Center and Collaborative Grant, and then a project that we're doing in collaboration with Pasadena City College out in Southern California. But then our local collaboration is with a food company, actually, Elite Foods, which spun off a division called Empire Medicinals. And what they do is they make culinary mushrooms, but they're looking to branch out into some other products that they want to make. But they don't have any R&D. They're a very small company startup. So we took on the role of their R&D. So the students have been doing research on this topic for now almost a year and a half. And just recently, they presented at the National Conference of Undergraduate Research. Now, if you don't know NCUR is the largest showcase in the country of undergraduate research. So it's all institution types. It's not, and the other thing about it is that it's not a given, right? You have to apply the applications go through some pretty intense scientific review before you're actually accepted to present at this conference. So it's a huge deal to actually get accepted, and it becomes a published abstract that they can put on their CVs. And so they just recently did that. And so I just wanted them to be able to come and talk to you guys. You can hear about this project a little bit. I brought in a little sample of what the end products might look like, right? So if you take these capsules, this is the type of stuff that the products might eventually be going into. So I'm actually now going to turn it over to Chelsea, who's just going to walk you through what the project looks like and sort of the workflow that they've been involved with. And then at the end, if you have questions or comments, then you can jump right in.
Thank you. All right, hello everybody. Hello. I'm Chelsea, as Jim has stated, and we have been doing a lot with research, and we actually had a significant finding recently and a few other findings, but I will get to those very shortly. So basically what we do in the lab is we actually cultivate the samples that we're given. We start by putting them on plates and growing them basically on the plates so that we can then bulk up the samples in these flasks in a broth that they float around, propagate. They essentially release all the nutrients into the broth that they're in, which we can then have to take as samples to analyze for sugars and any other nutrients we are potentially looking for. From that, we actually put it through filtration, as you can see right here, and it basically condenses our product so that we can track that it's eating the nutrients it gives us, that it's producing what we need it to find the most efficient way to produce the product. And the end product doesn't always go as planned, as by this nice little image here. Generally, we wind up drying out the mushroom remnants and we pulpate them and send them off to Empire Medicinal for further examination, but there's always batches where like contamination can happen. That's what we don't hope for, obviously, but we have had a lot of successful batches as well. One that ran for nearly a month, actually, with fantastic results. And we measured out using what's called a spectrophotometer, where it uses light to essentially measure the density through the liquid to give us our reducing ratios on whether or not the product is taking the nutrients to grow. And it's a very fascinating study, and I'm very happy to have been a part of it. It's definitely opened my eyes to the detail that research takes, for sure, and I absolutely love everything about it. It's been a great experience. I've worked with a lot of great people, and I hope to be continuing more work like this in the future. And who wants to go next?
Matt, Layla, you guys want to say anything? Matt's like the veteran, so you're looking at the veteran
That's
student.
been the
right
longest here.
Yeah, he's got the full history.
I'm Matthew. It's been a real great experience for me. When I first started on the project, it was at the height of COVID, and so a lot of our lab classes were being put online. And what the first thing that comes to mind is what I got out of the project was just the hands-on technical experience that I was able to go into a lab and actually do the things, because you can learn about it from a book or do simulations online, but it's just really not the same as actually physically going there and doing it yourself. And also learn a whole lot of other stuff, working with a team long term. And one thing that I thought was really valuable was in the labs and stuff in class, the teachers already know the answers, but if something goes wrong, one of our batches get contaminated, it's not even the professors know the answer, right away. It's, a genuine mystery. And so just being able to collaborate with the team and try to diagnostic and figure out exactly what's going on. These are the steps that we use. I found that really helpful and very very helpful, very eye-opening.
Great skills.
You
I
got
like
your
your
last
shirt
one.
too.
You
That's an
gotta say
awesome shirt.
You gotta say
I
something.
like that shirt.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Today's the day.
Hi, my name is Layla.
Oh,
I
man.
am the newest member of the Mushroom Polysaccharide Project. I have to be honest, this is the most valuable experience I've probably ever had in my entire life. I've learned so much from equipment. I can run a whole bunch of machines like bioreactors. I've learned how to operate an autoclave, which sterilizes things. I've learned valuable life experiences as well, like how to maintain a sterile work environment, how to work in a team, and communicate effectively. So I'm very grateful to be on this project, and I've gained so many life experiences from it. Thank you very much.
We probably have a little time for questions, or are we way behind?
No, we can take some questions. Are there any questions for the group from the trustees?
Stop sharing.
I think
Nope.
Jeff, are you talking?
Sorry, a couple of questions. Professor Hewlett mentioned doing the R&D for the companies, and I guess my question is, first is, how did we get connected to the company? Did we approach them? Did they approach us? How did we do that?
Well, I think Dr. Nye did the matchmaking. Didn't you originally get
Well,
Chris? Or?
I 50% of the credit, and actually I'll say 75% of the credit goes to Louis Nossi, 25% for me. We met these individuals at a function at the Wegmans farm, where they brought in amongst 35 to an event right there in the farm. And we met these gentlemen at the event, and that created the typical, hey, you have something that we might be interested in, vice versa. We exchanged cards. And the next thing we knew, we had Jim at a meeting in this room before COVID, speaking with the gentleman from LEAP, and that's where it started. And Jim and his students and assistant took it off like a rocket and launched it into hyperspace.
Wow.
Very good. I guess my thought is that we need to either create or figure out other similar events that we can interact with it at whatever level we need to try and create some additional opportunities that are similar to the ones we're talking about here.
And if I can jump in, we actually, through our other grant projects, we actually target small startups for finding research projects for our students in our labs, because they technically they typically, I should say, don't have R&D departments because they are small startups, and they're great partners because they need help and we need projects. And so we sort of, I guess, intentionally go after some of these startups to see if they've got some work that we can do for them. And those relationships usually work out really well because it benefits everybody.
Yeah. The other thought is that the more we do this kind of thing, especially if we're hitting startups or other companies in our region, the better the discussion and our ability to articulate why this is so supportive of the economic development of the counties.
Jeff, go ahead, Donna.
No, I was just going to follow up on what Jeff was saying. This sounds to me as a different approach to what we had attempted to explore at one point, which was business development center. working with startups, but we didn't have space to do such a thing. And it sounds like we're simply doing it without a physical location and pursuing that. Would you say that was a fair assessment?
This is Rob. I'd say it was. What you were talking about is we were originally trying to get an incubator into the Victor campus. And it was based on typical workspace type areas for folks with a maker space. And unfortunately, before we got it started, there were commercial folks that actually put some places in Victor and are growing nationwide. But Jeff, to answer your second question, and for Jim, we are starting exactly that to try to create that connection. It's through the New York Ag Tech and Catherine Young, who I just visited recently for that aspect. And Jim, you just really narrowed it completely when we were talking about how can we partner. And what I need to relay back when we talked about that is exactly what you all did. And that's where we need to get that connection. So we need to keep going back there frequently as they hopefully, as you said, grow their station there. They've created a wonderful extension to the Cornell Tech Center there in one of the older buildings, creating labs purely for R&D perspective and for people to lease. So it's the workspace like you just talked about, Donna, except it's for R&D for food and technology type of activities. And it's pretty impressive what they're going to get accomplished there as they grow it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. You'll have to just cut me off if I get too excited about this. But so the company Leap Foods has actually leased some space in this Ag Tech Center so that they can start to scale up this process that we've been developing. So when you saw the pictures, those bioreactors are operating are between like 2 and 4 liters of liquid, and they want to start scaling up. They want to get to 30 to 100 to 1,000 liters. And the only way they're able to start thinking about that is because they needed the work that we've done at our scale in order for them to take and then actually scale that up to a commercial level so that they can actually start commercializing the product. That you can't jump from nothing to that. So we were sort of the critical step in this company being able to go from nothing to a much larger scale. And they've already committed to that space, so they're ready to start looking at the commercialization of this stuff. So these guys should feel pretty proud that the data they've collected and the work that they've done has actually allowed that to happen. And the company is very appreciative of it.
Yeah. So who owns the rights? I don't even know if that's a correct way to say it. Who owns the rights to that data? Does FLCC or do they, or is there a contract in place?
Well, that is a great question. We did not get into any sort of talks about having some IP agreements with the company. We sort of just by a handshake and word of mouth said that everything that we do, we will provide back to you. And they committed to allowing us also to be able to share anything that we do with the academic community so that we can publish papers and do things. So once that was in place, it's probably not as I think we're okay. But it's a good question. We've had those conversations before, and currently I don't know if we have a mechanism to even do that here, because that is now us acting as an incubator for a company that we're working for essentially. So but it's a great question.
Yeah, but from this though, it can grow into internships and future employment down the line. So no, it's great opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, if they get to a point where they've actually have scaled, I mean, they're going to hire these guys.
Exactly.
I mean,
Why wouldn't they?
there's nobody in this area that has more expertise in this commercialization of this product than the people that are here. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been, like, based on how the talks that I've heard in the lab and during one of the classes we took, which was biomanufacturing, when we toured their plant, like, once they scale up, they are basically looking for people who have our experience with the equipment, because like the bioreactors we use is definitely a skill, and it's not just something you can just pick up. You learn it and you figure out exactly what environment you want to create with it. You balance the pH of whether you want it to be how acidic you want it to be or basic you want it to be. and you control the oxygen, you control everything in it. And it's honestly an amazing skill to have. And it's so ridiculously transferable to things like foods industry. And he was talking about how the plant was going to be opening up most likely in Geneva, and how he would definitely be like looking for people and talking to our biomanufacturing class at the time of how he'd basically be looking at FLCC for people.
That's excellent.
Yeah, that's a magic of a community college. It's what it does.
Yeah.
Well, and we've also entered into discussions that if they do scale and they do become commercial, that we would still continue to remain a significant portion of their R&D efforts, so that the hopefully the plan will be when they start making money, right, that they can actually start investing back into FLCC
Right.
to actually support us as a significant arm of their R&D efforts. So that they're very excited about that, because no one else is going to have the expertise, and they don't want to lose this, right? That this scale is important to them. Yeah.
And just to follow on, because it's not that it was on the same track I was ever. And it really does get down to like patents, copyrights, things of that nature. And I know Carnegie class institutions are pretty well set up to do that.
Yeah,
I don't think
that's what they do.
we are really, but it's something that maybe our good friend Louis Nocek could start thinking about how to get some resources behind all that stuff.
Or we could just spin off a company of our own and compete with them for.
That is actually an idea that MBCC does in a different way. So that is very true. And do it that way.
Compete with the wineries.
There you go.
Yeah.
We'll take them over.
One last quick question for the students. What I heard from a lot of them was that you learned a lot of transferable skills. And it's not necessarily the things that go on our resume all the time, but it's really what the employers need. I heard about working together as a team, solving problems, all these things. They don't necessarily translate on a resume, but they really are essential skills. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot about it going on right now. Did some of these skills that you developed help you also in your other classes for success here at FLCC?
Hey, Debbie, do you want to unmute yourself and answer that if you heard the question? Since you haven't got a chance to talk yet.
I'd love to speak. Are you kidding me?
Debbie, everyone.
Hey.
Hi, everybody. So I started with Matt with the project. So what I would like to say as far as these skills that we've learned and how they're transferable to other jobs, I also work at an area hospital in the emergency room. So to be able to transition these skills, learning how to work together, especially in COVID, to be able to communicate, learn how to solve problems together, running out of masks, somebody who may normally not do CPR is doing CPR, had to do that. So yeah, this class it's more than just a class to me.
Yeah.
Did I freeze?
You must have, because
No.
well,
You're
we
back.
heard
Your voice has been great.
We heard you.
we heard there she is.
You heard me? Oh, okay.
Outstanding answer. Professor Hewlett, this is great stuff. I applaud the students. Chairman Martin, I think you have a resolution you want to propose?
I do, and with the trustees' permission and the audience's permission, I'd like to read the resolution in acknowledgement of the students' important work. And Professor Hewlett, I'm going to give you an advance heads up to identify and list the 5 deserving students when we come to that portion of the resolution. Whereas the Finger Lakes Community College Board of Trustees would like to formally recognize students that presented their undergraduate research projects to the National Conference for Undergraduate Research, and whereas the Board of Trustees acknowledge that acceptance to present at the National Conference for Undergraduate Research is a highly competitive process, and whereas the Board of Trustees would like to recognize the students for their many accomplishments and their desire and dedication to their present and future research. And whereas the Board of Trustees recognize these students with honor to pursue the opportunity that was available through the National Conference for Undergraduate Research, allowing further expansion of knowledge. And whereas the following students, Professor Hewlett?
What do you want me to do? I guess I lost it on my Java.
The five, please name the 5 students if you would.
Oh, so we got Demi, who's on the call. Phil Simmons, he's not on the call, I don't think. So we didn't get to hear from him. And then, so Chelsea, who you heard from on the end, and then Layla right here in the middle, and then Matt. And I don't want to forget that Jessica's here as well, who's the project manager.
Terrific. We'll include that all in the resolution. And now therefore be resolved that the Finger Lakes Board of Trustees recognizes the students as undergraduate researchers by the Finger Lakes Community College Board of Trustees. Congratulations. Thank you, Chairman Cushman. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Hewlett.
Thank you,
students.
Can we remind them that they're going to get a signed copy?
Oh, yes. So this resolution that Chairman Martin just read will be distributed. You'll get a signed copy and it will have your name on it. And it'll be something that you can hang on a wall or share on a resume. So appreciate all that you've done.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And with that, on that very, very high note.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So on that very high note, I will ask for a motion to end this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Santa, second.
This is
Second.
Joan, I second.
Got Donna for a second. Any all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Passes. We're done. Chairman Martin, back to you.
Thank you, Trustee Cushman. What a wonderful meeting and a wonderful celebration of fine work and fine students. We are to our Facilities and Finance Committee. And, we have Trustee Assels as our current chair. And if you might take it away, Jeff.
Sure, thank you. I'll call the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting to order. And the first order of business is the review of the April minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions or corrections to make to those minutes? If not, we'll consider them accepted. We're going to get reports on the operating budget updates. And I'll ask Adam to begin that.
Thank you, Trustee Aslis, and I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, so there are several reports in your packet. We will start with this one. This is the monthly report dated March 31st, 2022. At that point in time, we were about 58% into the fiscal year. On the revenue side, year-to-date revenue was $41.5 million, or about 80% of the funds received to budget. Again, this is typical flow for funds for the year, primarily from tuition and fees. The non-credit line still tracking with historical trends at about 25% revenue. And for the federal aid, there are two components in this line. One is the institutional and one is student aid. For the institutional, that budget, the $7.5 million there, the institutional composes about $2.4 million of that, of which $1.6 million has been spent. Student aid portion, it's about $5.1 million, of which, as of this report, $2 million were spent. We also spent another $1.9 million in April, so there will be updated numbers next month in next month's report. On the expense side, year-to-date expenses are tracking well. $30 million year to date, or about 55% compared to the budget. The only line that really stands out here is the non-credit line, which is also tracking according to trends and in line with the revenue side. And we do expect those to go up in the coming months. Soon I'll be working on projections for year end, so we can begin to have an understanding of the fiscal position come the year end of the fiscal year. Any questions on this first report?
If not, go ahead.
All right. Second report, it's the same monthly report. However, this one is without federal aid. So you see here the federal aid, the lines are zeroed out. And this is just to get an idea of where we would be fiscally if we did not have these federal funds part of the budget. So without the federal aid, the expected revenue would be about $44.7 million prior to applying fund balance or this encumbered reserves. Compared to the projected expenses, so one thing that I'm going to do on the next report, you'll see here in the supply and expense line, there's $17.8 million in that line. That does include currently the stimulus funding in that. These reports are kind of hand generated off of a couple of general ledger account reports, which are in some instances over 200 pages long. So we are still working on dissecting some of these lines for better reporting. So if we were to back out that 7 million out of this supply line here, it would bring us down to approximately 10 million or so. So if we did that, the projected expenses here would be about 47.3 million, not this 54.9.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was 47.3 million, then we're looking at an operational deficit of about 2.6 million for the fiscal year. Whereas for the approved budget, we had about 927,000 for applied fund balance. So if we backed out those federal stimulus funds, it would be about $2.6 million deficit based on operating expenses. Any questions on this report? All right.
Any questions? If not, go ahead, Adam.
All right. So the
There's
next
some
report,
agreements.
next report here is a stimulus update. And I apologize, this last line is on the second page. We'll fix that for next time. So this stimulus report, this was updated last week, April 27th. And this is for institutional funds only. Our controller, Christine, is currently working on a federal report that is due this Friday, May 6th, which will provide us with a much better fiscal standing of our balances. The figure in the lower right-hand corner, which is this number here, this 352. This represents the anticipated unallocated funding from the stimulus funds on the institutional side. Now, there are two sources of expenses that we're looking at to reimburse ourselves, so to speak, as a result of COVID. The first one is rent expenses. We had reduced capacity due to COVID, but we are still paying the full occupancy rate for the rentals that we have, such as our campus centers. SUNY reimburses us about 40% of those rental costs. So we can utilize some of the stimulus funds to help capture some of that other 60% that we actually pay. And how we do that is we're looking to get final numbers on what the percentage of in-person instruction was versus remote instruction. And we can take that percentage and then apply that to that 60% balance and reimburse us for those costs. The second one we're looking at is wages. So at the beginning of the pandemic, those who could not perform their jobs remotely were still compensated full pay while we were in a fully remote status. So we can, again, recoup those costs with stimulus funds and put that back into the fund balance. Now we did, or I would say we, because I wasn't here at that point, but at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a specific code put into our systems to identify those individuals that were being paid. So it's just a matter of pulling that report and identifying that. So with those two funds, with those two areas, we will well be able to capture 352,000, which is the balance of the institutional funds here. And that will go back into the fund balance. The other items that are going to go into the fund balance, this 757,000 is here. That's for lost revenue from 2021.
Uh.
And we still have a couple of estimated lines here. We don't anticipate these to be that much, but again, we don't know. But these are anticipated costs for COVID-related expenses in 22-23. We're hoping we don't have to spend that, but it's there just in case. Any questions on this report?
Any questions?
Yeah, I do have one. Sorry, Adam, to be late there. So dollars back into the fund balance right now, you're anticipating, by some quick math here, looks like just a tad over $1 million. Is that approximate?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Thank you.
And that's in addition, we've already captured this 409,000. This was already captured back into the fund balance as well. And this is the chargeback rate that we captured earlier in the fiscal year. I think it was back in September, October, to capture as lost revenue. So that was also added to the chargeback or to the fund balance.
So that was within this fiscal year, or was it the prior fiscal year?
It was this fiscal year.
Oh, it was. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And like I said, we're having that the federal report that's due this Friday, so we can have a better idea of actual balances, and then we'll have a better idea of what the impact is to the fund balance based on institutional funds that we were able to capture for that.
Yeah, and that was going to be my follow-up question was assuming, and I understand you got to finalize the numbers, but let's assuming that give or take a little, $1 million goes back to the fund balance. Where does that leave our fund balance? How much would be in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I have some preliminary numbers right now. I do have this later in my report, but I can go over it now as we're talking about it.
Whatever fits.
No, I can. So I just have to find it. We had our current fund balance is roughly about $9 million. And so there's two things that are going to be affecting our fund balance in the next several weeks. One is we are still going through our final audit stage. During that process, there is a potential that we have to capture $1.3 million that would negatively impact or reduce our fund balance based on closing out certain accounts. That's something we're still working on. So that $9 million goes down to about $7.7 million. We add in back the $1 million roughly of this institutional funds that we're still looking to capture. That brings us back up to about $8.7 million or so. So, and again, when I reiterated my first report, the first financial report, working on projections for year end. And that will give us a better idea of where we'll stand from our fund balance perspective at year end. But right now, within the next several weeks, I anticipate it to be anywhere from 8.5 to 8.8 million.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
So I'm sorry, I do have one more.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
We speak of our annual budget. I know we made an adjustment as a result of some of the stimulus dollars that came our way. So for the fiscal year of 21-22, we consider our annual budget to be $57 million.
47.3.
Well, so the annual budget that was approved by the board was was 47 million, 47.4. The adjustments we'll have to make at year end, as we get closer to the fiscal year end, will be the adjustments based on the federal aid. Because there was the uncertainty or not knowing what the impact to federal aid would have been at this time last year when the budget was developed, those costs were not incorporated into it. So like last fiscal year, there were several budget adjustments made based on stimulus funding. The same practice or the same thing we'll have to do later this fiscal year is to do some budget resolutions to capture those revenues and expenses so that we can record those and then report up through the county and SUNY.
And when do you anticipate that happening? Would that be at our June meeting or would that be at our August meeting?
I would anticipate that to be the August meeting. So we have a better idea and we wouldn't have to do, hopefully 2 resolutions, one in June and then one in, August, that we, because we underestimated, so to speak.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Okay, for my next report. So this is going to be a high-level discussion of where we are at with the current fiscal year 22-23 budget bill. So this chart here is kind of a trend analysis of each fiscal year from 17-18 through 21-22. The column on the far right, the green column, that's the budget projection for 22-23. And as you can see, currently, total revenues, total expenses, the budget estimation is $47,937,265. That is about a $519,000 increase from this current fiscal year, or 0.09%. And if we look at, show real quickly, if we look at down here, this is a per year, and you can see that the expense increase from this current fiscal year to this fiscal year, 22-23, is about 1.09%. Now, in order to balance this budget,
you want us to ask questions now or at the end?
oh, shoot, go for it.
Bring up the chart that's at the bottom. There we go. So if I'm looking at the 22-23 and we're looking at the chargeback line item, are we saying that chargebacks are likely to go up 17%?
That is correct, yes.
Wow.
So we jump ahead to my notes and I will go through that.
Okay.
I knew that'd be a question.
Yeah, that leaped off the page at me. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, so there is an anticipated increase in chargebacks, and the chargeback calculation has a direct correlation to the revenue stream.
Yeah.
Now, if we recall last year or this current fiscal year, there was $1.9 million in stimulus fund budget in there. That is removed, so that changes the flow of funds here. So chargebacks. Chargebacks are calculated from a revenue offset to the total projected expenses. So if you take miscellaneous revenue, student revenue, and state aid, subtract that from total expenses, that balance equals the cost not covered by those revenue streams. That figure is then divided by the projected total FTEs to get a gross chargeback rate. Then that rate is then multiplied by the number of out-of-county FTEs. Now, the reason that's so high is because, one, our out-of-county FTEs, the percentage is about 64% of our student body population. So it is a majority. So there's a lot of students that those counties get charged back to, and that's why that number is so high. And if you'll see over the years, this line here, there is really no consistency in the chargebacks.
Yeah.
Now, I do know that has been a point of discussion at SUNY. And I know several years ago, and I'm sure some of you that may have been on a board around then, I know Dr. Nye has talked about this. There was discussion on changing the calculation model for chargeback rates. It was proposed, but it was never enacted. So it was, they went back to the old way, so to speak, of doing chargeback calculations, which is that revenue offset to expenses divided by FTEs and multiplied by out-of-county FTEs.
All right. So let me say something. You tell me whether I'm right or wrong. So the more FTEs we have arguably changes the chargeback amount, depending on whether those FTEs come from the sponsor's county or from the other counties.
Yes.
Yep.
Is that
correct? Yeah, yes.
Okay, the more FTEs, the lower the chargeback.
Yes.
Depending on where those FTEs come from.
Correct, depending on where those FTEs come from. Yes.
Okay, how do the FTEs that come from our online, which arguably could come from anywhere in the country, play into this equation, or don't they?
They don't.
So if we were to say triple our FTEs for online from out of state, it wouldn't have an impact on the chargeback amounts or rates that we have to charge our other counties. Is
No.
that
So
okay?
right, because so the online model is not directly tied to
Okay.
on
That's
campus
separated.
model, so to speak. Yeah, we do receive. Yeah, we do receive an online service fee. That is revenue we do receive from SUNY Online. That has been increasing over the past couple of years, which is a good thing. But no, it doesn't have a direct correlation or impact to the chargeback rate.
But Jeff, I'll say one thing. We'll take any FTEs anytime, anywhere, whether or not they're part of that model. So it's still beneficial. Okay.
No, I agree. I just needed to know whether those online FTEs factor into this equation at all.
Yeah,
And
no.
Basically, if they don't, they're separate.
Not for the multiplier effect. No. Adam, one thing to help Jeff a little bit, I think, and you may not have it top of your head, and I don't have it top of mind, what our chargeback rate was for this year and what it will be next year on that 17%, because that 17% from a revenue side is big. What does that mean for a county in terms of what they were charged this year, where they also got a break, and we lost $409,000 worth of revenue to give them a break when we found out later they didn't need the break as much. But what's this year's proposed and what was last year's chargeback rate?
Yeah, so I can see.
Because then, Jeff, you can get a head count, a per capita type. What's it going to be?
Give me a second. I got to pull up another file so I don't give incorrect numbers. Let's see. So where are we at? So the projected chargeback rate for next fiscal year, or 22-23, is $4,620. And this current year's rate, I believe, is $30,700, that range. So there's about $1,000 increase.
Okay.
Projected for next fiscal year. And that's why there's such a huge jump from, last fiscal year, $8 million to this current fiscal year to next fiscal year. And if you think about percentage, I said about 64% of out of county students, or FTEs. Next fiscal year, that's projected to be a little over 2,000 FTEs, 2,021 FTEs. So it's a big chunk.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
So a couple other things I just want to highlight in this. So in order to balance the budget, right now, as of this report, which was done last week, is about $1.9 million from the fund balance. I have updated that slightly. We're about $1.88 million now, based on a couple other changes. So these numbers, this is a working document, and things are changing a little bit. Over the past 5 years, when we talk about fund balance use, this number here represents about 3.6% of the budget. I'm sorry, 3.9% of the budget. Over the course of the past 5 years, the average fund balance use has been about 3.6% of the budget. So we're a little bit higher than normal. Again, working to reduce that as much as we can. Some of the main drivers for the increases in expenses, one is the estimated personnel increases due to pay rate adjustments. Later this evening, there are 2 contractual resolutions for approval. Those numbers have been included in this as an estimate, so these numbers will not change after those resolutions are approved. The other big adjustment increase was health insurance costs. Next fiscal year, it is anticipated they're going to increase about $440,000. And then again, contractual obligations, cost of goods, service contracts, utilities, insurance. Those are all items that have gone up somewhat out of our control, either due to inflation or built-in percentage increases year over year. There have been a couple decreases to help offset some of these. The first one is New York State employees' retirement contribution has decreased approximately $431,000. This is due to reduced employees in the defined benefit plan, either due to retirements or resignations. Big impact with that was the retirement incentive done last year.
Last year.
That impacted that. Another decrease was about $372,000 decrease in the requested equipment costs, most notably in the IT AV equipment line. A lot of that has been replaced with HERF over the past 2 years. So that line decreasing, has been somewhat of a anticipated decrease, but again, in the coming years, looking for that to go back up as those life cycle of the equipment goes down. So any questions on the projected 22-23 budget? I will say, overall, I think considering how the economy is going, the cost increases of things, I don't think we're in a horrible position at the current budget estimate, about $47.9 million. We know that relying on the fund balance, roughly at 3.8% at this point, is not sustainable. What I will be working on is some information for the Board of Trustees on how to mitigate the fund balance usage for next fiscal year. I will have more information on that during a formal presentation of the fiscal year budget at the next board meeting. And then over the summer, putting together multi-year budgeting models so that we have better insight into future expenses and how best to mitigate the future reliance on fund balance to the extent that we are. Any other questions on that?
Yeah, any other questions or comments about this?
Jeff, George, one quick question. It's kind of a future question. Because we had all this big, because of COVID and the relief, we got this big investment in equipment and so forth, and all that's going to come due for replacement about the same time. Do you perceive in your budgeting over the few years a way to sort of start to allocate for that so we don't get one big bump after the fourth year, let's say?
Right. Well, and that's where that multi-year budgeting model is going to come in extremely handy, especially considering whether it's software licensing fees that we now have going out 3 years, because a lot of those we've prepaid for 3 years. So we don't have to worry about it for the next 3 years. But that fourth year, we have to worry about it. So how are we going to plan for that? And that's where that multi-year budgeting model is going to come into a significant play in strategically planning our fiscal years ahead. So it's going to be really important that we don't just throw together this multi-year budget model just to have it, but we actually use it as a tool for us to be, put us in a better financial position moving forward.
Thanks.
Just one follow-up question based on what you were saying, Adam. Does the college currently have any specific reserve funds that we fund over time so that when we have a large expenditure, we have already accumulated the money for that purpose? I was thinking, and this is probably not a good example, but sooner or later we have to replace computer equipment. So you can anticipate the life of, laptops, desktops, etc. But do we have like a reserve fund to replace that kind of equipment when the time comes?
So to my knowledge, and Dr. and I could probably speak better maybe because of historical knowledge, we do not have a specific fund reserve for so-called special projects. So
Okay.
there isn't like a capital fund reserve where we put away money every year because we know we're going to have a bigger expense coming up.
Yeah.
However, I do know that, from an IT standpoint, John Taylor and his team are really good at understanding what's coming up, and in his IT master plan, there are costs associated looking in the out years of what is going to be needed. So I think from that standpoint, they do plan that accordingly and incorporate that into every fiscal year budget. But that's where that multi-year budget will tie into the IT master plan, the campus master plan, so that all those items come together and we really have a good understanding of what the approach is coming next fiscal year and the fiscal years after that.
Yeah, I know from my experience with the county, while we used to have a fund balance, I think of say $15 million, we used to have any number of reserve accounts that might have 40 or $50 million in them. But when it was time to replace a major piece of highway equipment, we just paid cash for it because we had reserved the money over a long number of years for the life of the equipment. When it was time to replace it, we simply paid for it and bought another one. So there's a whole kind of big, broad discussion to have about reserve accounts, and we can have that at the time that you talk about multi-year budgets and the like.
Hey, John, John, can you speak up a little bit about that? Because it's been being done in a similar way based on life cycle of equipment. So it's been done a little bit differently. You want to elaborate on that?
There's a couple of areas where we have major expenses over the years. You're absolutely right, Jeff. Laptops and PCs don't get better with age. You have to replace them eventually. And so we have a life cycle plan that
Good. Okay.
works through the offices. That's one thing. One other thing we do is when there's a very large expenditure, like we recently had to replace our compute infrastructure for the whole campus, which really all 150 servers we have reside on those devices. That was a large expense, and we ended up entering into a lease deal, which spreads the expense over 3 years. So those sorts of things even out the budget requests year to year.
Okay, thanks.
And, I'll add to that. There's another avenue that we pay for some technology increase or upgrades. One, for instance, was the phones for the entire campus. That was actually part of the capital maintenance plan, which was funded by the county and SUNY. And that was about $1 million project. So there are other avenues to capture larger IT expenses. And we can work those into those capital plans as well.
So well, not just IT, you're correct. We have to give the county great credit. They gave us $500,000 a year for capital maintenance already. But what's really important, Jeff, you highlighted this a while back, and we've got all this new equipment, the high-flex stuff, that's an increase to the normal life cycle activities John has already talked about, and that we have to explore the ability of adding IT hardware, which we learned recently can be utilized for capital, so you can get the 50% match with SUNY. We need to. That's part of the long-term planning that Adam has to put into the multi-year budgets.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, on to last report real quick. This is speaking of capital maintenance, the 2022 FLCC capital maintenance project. And this is part of the capital maintenance plan, the 5-year plan that is done every year and updated every year. So this is $1 million for this coming fiscal year, 22-23. 500 which comes from the county, as Dr. Nye just said. The other 500 is funded by SUNY. So for the items identified in this list are part of the master plan and comprehensive study of the existing facility structure. The project work includes replacing aged equipment, providing enhanced systems based on new technologies, and ensuring the safety of our students in code compliance. So some of the projects outlined on this form are second phase of replacing electrical panels, the gym heating and ventilation units, FLCC site work, including parking lots, roads, and sidewalks, and classroom and common area space upgrades. So that total project cost for the fiscal year is $1 million. And if there are no questions on that, that concludes my report.
Are there any other questions for Adam and on the financial reports? Okay, thanks, Adam. We have a number of resolutions, Adam. It looks like the first couple of three are yours to present. So you want to talk about those?
Yes, let me make sure I'm on the right one here.
First one is the lounge 2-story tent at CMAC.
Yep. So this one is supplemental agreement for the Headliner Lounge. It's a 2-story tent project that is currently underway. This agreement is approve the renovation project for the lease space by Friends of CMAC.
Is this still on the footprint of the land they're using anyway?
Yes, it's directly adjacent to the actual amphitheater.
Okay. So what is a Headliner Lounge 2-story tent?
Basically, it's just another area where concert patrons can gather and enjoy company. So it's a large platform, so to speak, with a steel structure. During the concert season, tent-like flaps, walls will be put alongside the structure so that it's more of an indoor facility. Food and beverages available, seating. And then during the winter months when there's no concerts going on, those the tent-like siding will come down, so it's just an open structure.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, this is Rob. I gave you a schematic or a picture of it and described it in my last board report. And it gives an idea of what it'll look like.
Okay. And the supplemental agreement is, what does that define?
So
we agree to let them do that?
Yeah, so it's in addition to the agreement that was already signed by Friends of CMAC so that they can utilize the space.
Function.
And this just adds to that agreement saying they're putting another structure within that leased space.
Right.
And Jeff, that goes back to that agreement that's been signed by the county, the college, and Friends of CMAC. It has to be done to meet the most up-to-date MOU with all three parties.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yep. Let's see, moving on to the second item. The second item is to extend the contract. This is for sports medicine services. It's a 1-year extension of services to Rochester Regional Health, Rochester General Hospital. Contract was originally approved as Resolution 51-2019 for 3 years. The period covered will be July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. It is utilizing the same current pricing structure with a not to exceed price of $33,600.
Any questions? Okay, if not, the third one, which deals with restroom supplies.
Yep, the third one is an authorization to reject the bid for the purchase of restroom supplies. This was for a 6-month agreement. Because of the increase in cost of goods sold, our Director of Facilities, Kathy Ahern, recommended that we reject this bid. We have enough sufficient inventory to get us through when the next bid will need to go out, in the hopes that the cost of goods will go down in that time frame. So we will not be put in a position where we will not have supplies. We have a sufficient inventory to get us through these times.
Okay. Any questions regarding that? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the collective bargaining agreement. And Michelle, you want to address that?
Thank you. Yes, in your packet, you have two resolutions. One is for to approve the tentative agreement we've reached with the CSEA bargaining unit, and the other is to approve the agreement we've reached with the professional association. We're pleased to report that we've reached those agreements with those bargaining units.
Have those units approved them yet?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding these agreements? Okay, if not, then we're back to you for some informational items.
Yep, the first one is just renewal of design services with Advanced Architecture and Planning and Plan Architecture Studios. Both firms have indicated a desire to renew the contract. This is the first of two renewals available under the contract. Covers 12 months from June 6, 2022 to June 5th, 2023.
Okay,
And the second one is just a monthly transfer report. This is operational and no impact to budget.
are there any questions regarding those items? Anything else to come before the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the committee meeting.
Rich will move
that.
Thank you, Barb.
I'll
second it. I don't know who said that.
Rich.
Rich.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Steve, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Folks, let's take a 16-minute break and we'll begin promptly at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.
Okay. Steve?
Yes, Jeff?
Yeah, where do you want to put the nominating committee report on the agenda?
It's number 2 underneath new business right up top.
Okay,
Penny has it. So after I open the meeting, we'll get right to you.
okay.
I wasn't sure if it was muted or not earlier.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Cheryl, I think we're all set. We're okay. We'll begin in a minute here.
Yep. Yep. The boardroom's all set.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Just trying to get the projector light out of the vision. There it goes. There, it's better to me. Now the projector light's not in the top.
Well, welcome back, folks. Good evening, and we're delighted that you're joining us for the Wednesday, May 4th, 2022 trustees meeting of the Finger Lakes Community College. For those that are physically present and those that are joining us remotely, again, welcome. We're delighted that you're here with us this evening. Just finished some really fun-filled and information-packed filled committee meetings, and thanks to all that participated. You certainly keep us updated and fulfilled on our mission. Thanks very much. So I'd like to call to order the meeting today of May 4th, 2022. And the first item of business is new business, a proposed 2022-2023 slate of officers. And Trustee Jeff Astles, if you might enlighten us and as chair of this committee and tell us the nominations, please.
Sure. There'll be a final vote on this at the June meeting, and I'm sure in the packet there'll be a brief set of minutes of the committee meeting. Chairman Martin asked me to chair the nominating committee, and I asked trustees Hamlin and Mahalik to assist. And we'd like to report back that the slate of officers would be as follows, and that is that we would nominate to be the chair, Joan Geis, the vice chair, Don Cass, and the secretary, Rich Russell. And that briefly is the report for your consideration at the next meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Astles, and thank you to the work of your committee. We appreciate it. And to those that are willing to serve as we look forward to the 22-23 year. So thank you all. And again, this will be in front of us for a formal vote at our June meeting. Any questions of Trustee Astles? Comments? Hearing none. As we transition to the public community portion of our agenda here, I'd like to give our student trustee, Sophie Partial, who has been with us for this past year, the 21-22 year, an opportunity to introduce a guest that we have. And without stealing any thunder, Trustee Partial, maybe you could make an introduction.
Hey everybody, so I invited our new elected student trustee, Alani Rodriguez, to sit in and just be able to get the experience of what a board meeting is like. I asked Alani if she wanted to speak a little bit about herself. If not, I can do it. Alani, I think you're here.
She there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
There you go.
Hey,
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. Please, yes, we'd love to hear a little bit about yourself. So the floor is yours, and please go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
This is my second year at FLCC. I'm currently a healthcare studies major. My anticipated graduation would be in 2023, and then I'm hoping to go into the nursing program. I'm currently working in student life, and that's how I got kind of aware of this position. And I'm grateful to have Sophie with the transition. So thank you, Sophie. And I'm so excited to be the new trustee.
Well, we're delighted to welcome you. And Sophie, you're not going anywhere yet. You still have some business to do, but Lonnie, we're delighted to welcome you to the board formally in another month or two. And just like Sophie before you and others, you really are the reason we're all here. So it's important for us to have your perspective, to have you at the table, to certainly engage, if you will, in the matters in front of us as trustees. So we're delighted that you're going to be joining us, and wish you well in your studies, and you, Sophie, as well, as you transition here throughout the month of May. I know finals and so forth are coming up in front of you, and we wish you well in all of those. So thank you. This is our public community opportunity, and we, the Board of Trustees, value the input from members of our college community. In fact, we encourage your participation. If someone would like to share their thoughts, we please ask that you identify yourself at this meeting, and we'll be happy to provide up to 5 minutes for your individual comments. Would anyone at this time like to share their thoughts with the Board of Trustees? Anyone at all? Anyone that might be present, or anyone that might be with us in a virtual way, online?
Good evening, Trustee Martin. This is Joe Mariconda. I'm president of the Faculty Alliance. Good evening, trustees. It's good to see you all again.
Welcome.
There's a couple of things that the executive committee of the Faculty Alliance wanted to bring to the attention of the board. Tonight, you're about to pass two tentative agreements, most likely, for the CSEA and the professional associations. And as we congratulate our brothers and sisters in those organizations, one of the issues is that if those are passed, they're actually in conflict with the Faculty Alliance contract. We do not have a tentative agreement. We thought we did. We did not. That is something that I'm sure you can discuss with Dr. Nye in an executive session. But the college leaving the consortium is a direct violation of the Faculty Alliance contract. We filed a grievance with the school. Went to the provost, and from there it went to Dr. Nye. We have not heard from Dr. Nye at all. We are bargaining in good faith, but we have not heard from him on this issue. The tentative agreement that our negotiation team worked on was economically agreeable to all parties involved, and there's just a couple of issues that apparently are holding it up, and that's from Dr. Nye. I guess he would need to explain that to you. Since we were not responded to by Dr. Nye, then the grievance will then be served on the Board of Trustees, and that will be forthcoming either this week or next week. So we are concerned that the board should be aware of this. We are realizing that there's contract violation. There are solutions to this, which can be discussed with Dr. Nye, but we think that you should be aware of this and how this works out. I'm willing to answer any questions that I can if anybody has any.
We appreciate the opportunity to hear your comments, and thank you very much for sharing those. Any final thoughts at all?
We're looking to come into an agreement some way, but again, the board will need to talk with President Nye in an executive session and get details on that.
Okay, again, thank you for your comments, and I wish you well and hope you remain well and enjoy the rest of the semester.
Thank you. The same to you.
Anyone else that would like to share their comments publicly during this portion of our meeting? Community public comment. Anyone at all? Anyone else that might be joining us remotely, virtually? Final call? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much. We'll move on to our resolutions, Board of Trustee resolutions. And the very first one is the revision of the date, in this case, dates of this year's 54th commencement ceremony. Was scheduled for May 20th, 2022. It's still May 20th, 2022, and also added as Saturday, May 21st, 2022. With the board's permission, I'd like to take this separately, and please look for a motion and a second to approve the dates of May 20th and 21st, 2022. Please, a motion.
I'll move it. This is Jeff.
Thank you. A second.
Steve, this is Joan. I second.
Thank you, Joan. Any questions or comments from the trustees? Penny, anything else we need to be aware of in terms of this particular resolution?
No, that'll take care of it. Thank you.
Great. Hearing no final comments, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you. These next three we'd like to take together, and these are the reinstatement of our fellow trustee, Don Cass, as secretary of the FLCC Board of Trustees, as chair of the Finance and Facilities Committee, and reinstatement as a voting member of the FLCC Association. And before we take a motion in a second, I would be remiss, and we'd all be remiss if we didn't take the opportunity to thank trustees Hamlin, Mahalik, and Astles for your willingness to step in while Trustee Cass was away. Thank you very much. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you. 10-0. Moving on to the consent agenda, and we have quite a list. Those listed include the minutes of our April 6th board meeting, as well as, let's see, more than 10, if you will, resolutions that are referenced on the consent agenda, most of which we were able to highlight and identify in our committee meetings. So with the board's permission, we'll take that as a group, and please, a motion and a second to get this on the floor. A motion, please.
Don, I so move.
Thank you, Don. A second, please.
George, I'll second.
Thank you, George. There are quite a few here. So any final comments or questions from trustees with regard to what we have in front of us? Okay. Dr. Nye or Penny, anything from you that also would highlight our resolutions in front of us?
Nothing here, Penny?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, we'll call the question. Please, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Abstentions? Carried. 10-0. Old business. Any trustees that have any information that would like to? Sounds like a celebration by one. Okay, they just love this meeting. Terrific. Any old business that folks would like to bring in front of the trustees here? Any trustees in particular? At all? My chair's report we took at the top of the meeting with regard to Jeff's report, so I don't have anything further to add. And we move right to Dr. Nye, the president's report. Dr. Nye, please, if you would.
Well, thank you. I just want to, there's nothing new, but I will highlight some things I think are important on my report, and really happy with the way the search is going with JK Exec. And I've got the search chairperson in the room with me right here, Deborah Orloff, and they're getting ready to start screening the candidates. And I've been very happy so far with what's come out with the candidates, about 4 to 6 right now. I don't know if it's going to get much higher. But when you look at that, they've already screened everyone out, and they've done a really good job of actually beating the bushes and convincing some folks to be able to say, yeah, I think I do want to apply for that job. So very happy for that. No change for the provost. I'll be looking to choose a vendor for the search for the June board for the provost search, and then we will do the search actually. The official part of the search once the faculty get back over the summertime. So that'll be in the fall with the goal of spring of semester of 23 to relieve Cassie of her awesome responsibilities, which she has already done a great job stepping in thus far, and appreciate having Cassie here. I wanted to let you know that John Taylor and Adam Rathman have done an awesome job utilizing the resources of Morin Technologies. I think it is Morin. I know it's Morin. Yep, technology consultant. Sorry, I should have left my reading glasses on. They provided to the cabinet the other day an assessment of what the cost to go to Banner would be. And when I said it's 10 million, that's a conservative middle ground. It could be 8, it could be more than that, but it also includes a lot of costs that would be different from Aleutian. We're still looking at some of the numbers, but to me, and I'll let John speak in a second if he has any thoughts. It was daunting to get that number and go, oh man, I was hoping 5 to 6, maybe 7, and then we'd look to bond it. But we have to do a really deep dive into this, and we also have to work with SUNY. We need to see what they can do to support this. Erie Community College wants to do the same. There's another community college that wants to do the same. So it's I would say never die, never quit, but you had to take a step back after seeing the initial sticker price. John, you want to provide some details?
Sure. Thank you. I think what we did with Moran Technology Consultants, who, by the way, are premier experts in this field and highly regarded by anybody that's been working on ERP migrations. They've been in the business for 30 some years, and they've gone through and planned migrations for many higher ed institutions. They know the landscape, they know all of the ERP systems that are available, and they know the ins and outs of a migration project. I estimated this project at about 5.6 million, and that was back in 2018. But I, being a novice at doing a migration, I missed several things. A couple of very important ones are having a systems integrator, which is a company that would help do the configurations and migration of the data and manage those configurations of the new system. Also, backfilling of offices, that's a really important part because when you go through a migration, that's a multi-year thing, the folks in the offices really have to be involved with the migration, and you still have to do business day to day. And so that's a very important aspect. All of the reporting that we've created over 30 years would have to be migrated. That's an awful lot of work. And these folks at Moran really knew what they were talking about when it came to estimating those costs in with all of that. So I think what we have now is a very good, comprehensive, future forward look at what it would cost to do the migration. It certainly would align us better with SUNY in the long run and help alleviate some of the problems we currently have with our current infrastructure, which has an awful lot of custom coding in it, and we need to avoid doing that again. So I think it's a great look at what we need to do. Now, our task is to begin to look for funding sources, and I've already been in contact with SUNY, talking to them about what they could help out with, both monetarily and for labor. And so we'll see what they can come up with. But I think this puts us in a much better position having this knowledge. Take any questions anyone has.
Any questions of John Taylor?
This is Jeff, just one. At some point, whenever you think it's appropriate, it would be nice to have an overview of the elements of what's going to take place in the elements of the new system. Just so that, like when you say migration, so we have a better understanding of exactly what that involves. And I know from previous experience that anytime you have your own personalized custom programming that has to be translated into a system, that's a lot of extra work. Thank you.
Sure, that sounds good. Certainly, we could do that. One comment I have is, since we've created this custom code over many years, many of the functions that we ended up writing and programming are available in the native version of Banner. So some of that stuff wouldn't have to be converted. It actually would work in the new system. That's it. Other questions?
John?
I don't question. Go ahead, Donna, please.
Sorry. John, I've been involved in migrations, but they have not been of this length. 5 years seems like in eons in IT time. And that platforms will be changing as we're converting. How does one keep abreast of not only how the migration is going, but how it compares to what else is happening in IT at the same time for such a long-term project like that?
Sure. Let me be clear, and you haven't seen these numbers or the layout of the 5 years, but what Moran did was, based on their past experience, is they laid out really a 3-year migration. And the reason that they went out 5 years is because that's usually what they do to see what the costs will be like, both during the migration and post-migration. And the nice thing about our migration is currently we pay Ellucian licensing costs and maintenance costs every year for colleague. If we were to migrate to Banner, Ellucian has a master agreement with SUNY that would pay the licensing costs. So the last 2 years that they estimated that we would have 0 licensing costs, which is a very nice benefit. So that's why they estimated 5 years. They wanted to include those savings, so they would be apparent in those numbers. And actually, right now we're working on discerning operational costs post migration as well, beyond the 5 years, just to compare with what it costs us now and what it'll look like in the 5 to 10 year range, so we have a good idea of what the future looks like. Does that make sense, Donna?
It does. I know that one can't predict the future in IT, but thank you for letting us know how you're thinking about it.
Sure. You're welcome.
Thanks for the question, Donna, and the response, John. Final questions of John. Okay, appreciate the update. Dr. Nye, back to you.
Okay, and I'll probably put another person in the spotlight, but I wanted to highlight a little bit about the Honors House, and that we are moving forward and getting a little bit more clarity on being able to sell Honors House to Byrne Dairy, as mentioned, and working with the faculty, the honors faculty, Kathy Ahern and John Taylor and others, and Adam, to create a space for the honors faculty, and it would be the hall at the end. If you came in the other entrance in the front and turned right instead of going in or up the stairs towards the library, that entire hall could be used for them, and some space in the library adjacent to it that would change the dynamics within the library and allow the honors faculty to have their next iteration of their vision of Honors House, which they have aptly named Hemlock Hall. And it looks really interesting what's been done so far, and I'm proud of the work that people have done. Cassie's been involved, and she's got some work she's got to do with Sarah Moon and some of her concerns in the library and so forth. But it looks like it's feasible with Harmony, which is nice. To be able to accomplish something that's to the benefit of the foundation, the college, our students. And Cassie brought up a really interesting question for us to look at. The Honors House and the way it is right now, and the way you experienced it, Donna, is based on the vision of Kurt Nearing Bliss, John Paulson, and in particular, and Trista Merrill's taken that on. But Kurt Nearing Bliss and John Paulson are not going to be here forever. So will we be able to support it the same way we have in the past? And it was really an astute observation. But it looks like this is going to come to fruition with more harmony than we thought when we really originally started talking about it. And I'll let Louis and Cassie or anybody else who wants to pipe in to provide any other details. None from Louis? You're speechless?
I have nothing else to add.
Okay. How about you, Cassie?
I think you covered it well. Thank you.
Thank you. I did something good today.
So my question. Well, one question, I may have misheard. I thought you said they wanted to call it Hemlock Hall.
Hemlock Hall is what I've heard, what I've seen, you know, off of Hogwarts and so forth from Harry Potter.
Okay, I'm thinking of Plato.
Oh, okay. That's an age thing.
So I couldn't understand what the connection was there, but
Okay.
Yikes.
If you have not watched, go ahead, Cassie.
It's actually based on one of the lakes. All the Finger Lakes are recognized.
Okay.
in the different
Sorry, I thought it
areas.
was Hogwarts.
No,
Might be a little Hogwarts.
that's because Trista's involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thanks for the correction.
Thank you.
Anything else for the honors? Last thing real quick, I do invite you, if you have a chance, to stop by on May 25th when we have the new Finger Lakes Works with Their Hands on this campus with about 1,000 students that will be here instead of being broken up into the manufacturing, healthcare, which we always supported, and agricultural in one spot on our main campus. And a lot of good folks. Carol Urbatus has been involved, and Margaret Lorenzetti's been orchestrating amongst other folks, and I think it's going to be a great event. Carol, any thoughts from you?
Nope. It is a great event. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to host school districts in our service area. As Dr. Nye said, there's going to be well over 1,000 students and school personnel on our campus that day. And FLCC is actively involved in supporting the event in a variety of ways. Thank you.
And to close that out, and to use that old Ronco commercial, and wait, there's more. If you look at the bottom of my report, there is a link. If any of you would like to volunteer a little bit of time to support the WIB, who has to do the big orchestration for this, there's a form stack. And if you are interested in volunteering some time, it's due no later than tomorrow's the last day for if you have some time to volunteer, to put it into that form stack. I'm volunteering half a day to be out there. I'm not asking anybody else, but I just want to make sure you knew that link was there. If you got a few hours and what would be really important for you is we connect you with the people at the Work Investment Board to do things and that you see the work that they're doing. That's it. That's my report, Trustee Martin.
Well, thank you. First of all, questions of Dr. Nye, my fellow trustees. As you're thinking of one, if you and or Penny could send out information about the May 25th event that Dr. Carroll has talked to us about, that would be helpful. So at least we have the information. And also, if you suggest that we should be there at a particular time or place, we welcome that recommendation and that suggestion as well.
Great. Thank you.
Final questions of Dr. Nye.
Donna?
Dr. Nye, do you have any additional information on the art space 36?
Yes. Yes and no. We're still working on the transition over to the foundation, so it can be a 501c3. And Louis, I'll let you talk in a second. With this board's permission, what we've talked about is that normally if we could not allow or not help Art Space 36 become self-sufficient at a certain point in time, they were supposed to sunset. And that was over a period of 3 years, but that was right when COVID hit. What we're asking for, and we talked about, is to give them an additional 2 years, the next year and the year after, working within a 501c3 status to see if they can find a way to become self-sufficient. As you've heard from Adam previously, at some point, things that are not core to the college or can't be sustained, we'll have to go. Art Space 36 is a wonderful place. I support it fully. But part of the grant that funded this was based on they would have to become self-sufficient. And not only, Louis, if you want to say anything from 501c3 or Deborah, because you've worked with the grant side, please feel free to speak up.
No, we're just working on an MOU between the foundation and the college to try to figure out what the foundation has said. There will be an end if funding is not found. So That's going to be a part of it.
I'm currently working with the two coordinators on some benchmarking with similar college-funded galleries, most, if not all of which are in that tax status as opposed to operationally run.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. We'll move to liaison and committee reports with trustees' permission, and we have 6 or 7 to hear from, and we'll start out with our trustee, Sophie Partial, if you will, and please enlighten us with regard to a student report.
Hey again, everyone. My report is pretty short this month, but I have a couple of things that I wanted to highlight that happened. One of the big things was we had Laker Day on April 12th, which you probably know is a day where students don't have classes and there's just a bunch of events on campus for people to go to. There's a couple of really interesting ones. There was a conservation law demonstration for the con law students for them to actually see like what the job actually entails and ask the DEC officers questions. There was also a film in the cafeteria called Autism Goes to College. Another thing, April was Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So there was the Clothesline Project in the beginning of the month, which was displayed in the student center hallway. Students were invited to like create their own t-shirt with a message on it, kind of like breaking the silence around sexual assault, and to create more awareness about it. And then on April 9th, we had Acceptance Students Day, where students who have been accepted to the school but haven't actually confirmed that they're going to attend yet came to visit. And the admissions office gave them tours and put on a presentation. There was also a student panel where I think it was probably about 10 students were like up on the stage, and the crowd was able to ask the current students questions about their experience. And I was actually invited to be on the student panel. It was really fun, and the students seemed like they were really excited to attend. So yeah, that's about all I have.
Thank you, Sophie. Questions of Sophie? 2 weeks from Friday and 2 weeks from Saturday, there's some big dates coming up for some of your fellow students and so forth. And has graduation been a part of your world as well in terms of some of your insights and input?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people who are graduating and they're really looking forward to it. I myself am not, I still have another year, but yeah, that's definitely been a big thing. I know a lot of the professors have been kind of like encouraging students to actually go to the graduation because sometimes students don't really want to like walk across the stage. It's kind of nerve-wracking, but it's really important to like celebrate your success. So
well said, boy, very well said. Thank you for sharing that. We appreciate it. Okay, our Enterprise Risk and Audit Committee, Trustee Astles. You might be on mute.
Sorry, there's nothing to report at this time.
Okay, all righty. We'll wait and hear from you next month. Trustees Mihalik and Abraham, how about board development?
Santa and I had the opportunity to catch up on what came out of the Aspen Institute SUNY workshops for trustee leadership. And we ended up discussing a lot of areas that we hadn't thought about necessarily before, and some of the expectations and best practices that were pointed out by the people from the Aspen Institute. And so we thought we would combine that with the input from one of our previous retreats where the board had given us some input and be able to come back with a revised version of where we think the committee ought to be going. Santa, would you like to add anything to that?
No, you did a great job. Thank you.
Okay. Questions from trustees on board development? Or Santa? Thanks for your continued work, and we appreciate you helping kind of mold, if you will, even our agenda and the work that's in front of us. It's very important. Thanks very much. Let's see, the association, Trustee Hamlin.
Don was going to report today.
Yes,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I was a little cloudy still at the last meeting, but if I miss anything, Barb, please chime in. We heard from Heidi Bliss from childcare, Martin Glyco from the housing, and Samantha from athletics. They presented to us their proposed fiscal year 23 association and association housing budgets. We reviewed proposed housing capital expenditures for air conditioning. We're updating the search for a new audit firm, and we said goodbye to our retiring executive director.
That's right. You guys have been very busy. Questions of Don or Barb with regard to the association? Any questions? Thank you. Thanks for that report. The foundation, Trustees Geis and Abraham.
We just want everybody to know, and Louis can chime in on this, and Santa, tomorrow's the day of giving. You've all heard of it. And I think our goal this year is to have 150 people, Louis. Is that correct?
That's correct. 150 donors and 24.
We'd like to have 150 donors. Now, this does not mean you have to give $150 or $150,000, which of course we will accept all of those. However, $5 is fine, but we would really like to make the goal of 150 donors. So keep that in mind tomorrow. I'm sure you'll all get an email.
I'll just add that there's a new wrinkle this year and it's really exciting. So we have a major donor that's offered $10,000 if we get to 150 donors. And it's waiting to be activated. And I will say that this person that's challenged the institution is not super computer savvy, but they are already watching our website and they're having a great time. So they are taking note of where we are. We have had some increased traffic in probably the last 3 hours, which is really exciting. So I encourage everyone to make a gift no matter how large or small it is so we could activate that 10,000. Thank you.
Perfect.
Can I be facetious for a minute? John, is there any way those robot attacks could get diverted over to donating money to this account? Any ideas there since we've had these attacks?
I'll talk to them about it.
Yeah. And Louis, one more thing to mention is the golf tournament or the golf fundraiser. I forget what date that is.
So do I. I think it's,
June.
I want to say it's the second Tuesday of June. I could look at my calendar.
I think you're right, Louis, because it's a Tuesday this year.
It's a Tuesday. June 7th?
How about the 7th?
Yes, I believe it is on the 7th. It is not on my calendar.
No, I think it's the following week. It is a Tuesday, maybe the 13th.
13th?
I don't have the calendar in front of me, but.
That is not on my calendar.
13th is a Monday.
And it would be the 14th.
That have to be the 14th.
It is a Tuesday.
We will email that to you all tomorrow.
Okay.
Great. Questions about the foundation from fellow trustees? Trustee Mihalik, NYCCT. Boy, we've certainly been receiving lots of information about upcoming programs and so forth. What's new with NYCCT?
Well, just a very brief report from our Board of Directors meeting in April. Johanna Duncan Poitier, our Vice Chancellor from SUNY for Community Colleges, did address all the trustees, and I'll just point out a couple of things. Though we did not get the floor funding model passed, she has suggested that we immediately all start the advocacy efforts for getting that in the future. There seems to be a more positive approach depending on how the elections go. But she recommends that that process start now. One thing I wanted to bring back for Trustee Hamlin, there is a move afoot at the SUNY level to, I think that they have some grants that are working on attracting older students to community colleges for enrollment. So keep your ears open to see if we hear anything from SUNY about that. Dr. Nye, you might have some additional information.
Actually, I think we already had one. Carol's been doing a great job of working that in terms of an activity for older students. Carol, you want to elaborate?
Okay, can Donna repeat that question for me, please?
Oh, I had just mentioned that Johanna Duncan Quartier had mentioned that SUNY was trying to work with funding to work on attracting older adults.
That is correct. As a matter of fact, yes. So we are participating in the SUNY SEM initiative for community colleges. It's funded through a Lumina grant. We are receiving $10,000 in funding for our use through June 2023. Not a lot of money, but specifically focused on recruitment of adult learners. And I just shared a message relative to a webinar series that our acro coach sent us relative to adult learner strategies. So yeah, very timely question, and we're excited about it. We're updating the strategic enrollment management plan. You may recall that our plan concluded this past August. It was a 3-year plan. We're extending it for 2 years under the SUNY SEM initiative. And we have 3 working groups that are focused on developing goals, strategies, and tactics related to adult learners, retention, and the K through 12 pipeline.
Great.
Did I cover everything, Dr. Nye?
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Great news. Okay. One last thing. Johanna ended her comments with a statement that said they are getting a lot more interest and support through grants from foundations, specifically because of the work of trustees and their involvement from each of the community colleges. So she just wanted the trustees to know that your efforts, our efforts here at the local level, are making a difference at SUNY in them being able to attract more money for programs like the one that Carol just mentioned. The major accomplishment we had was we discovered that NYCCT had asked the question of why there was not a community college representative on the search for this new SUNY chancellor. And while immediately after that meeting, we sent a letter to the SUNY Board of Trustees Chair Merrill Tisch, and we now have the chair of the President's Association who's been invited to sit in on the chancellor search. Apparently it was an oversight, or that's how it was presented to us. And so NYCCT is very pleased to have been able to have initiated a role for community colleges in that search, the way we used to have. We do have the deadline for awards coming up. It seems like it comes up more and more quickly. I'd like to thank Don again for volunteering his time to be on the awards committee for NYCCT, but I'd also like to ask the cabinet and the Board of Trustees to think about the variety of awards that are available. I think we should always apply for it, nominate someone in at least one category. We have been successful in certainly the last 5 or 6 years in receiving recognition for people who have done wonderful things for our college. And perhaps we could ask for some suggestions, Dr. Nye, at our June meeting.
Absolutely. And we can also dust off we had 4 that we put together last year that we can dust off to provide for you all. So then we can meet that deadline for that. So we can do that. I took a note, and then we have a cabinet meeting tomorrow. We'll have a quick discussion if we have any ideas within the community. And I guess what I would ask if we need to do from you all, because this is a community and a college multiplier. And what I mean by that is, I think we need to pass back to you the different types of awards are there, because you have connections that we might not think about of someone that we need to recognize. They have to be connected with a college, but there may be some folks that we would not think about. So I think what we need to do is twofold, Donna. We'll send out what the awards are. So I think you might find a gem, a diamond in the rough I talk about. We might think of a different one, and we've got the other ones we already went through, and we can go from there. Does that sound good, Donna?
It sounds great. And I would just point out that there has been an additional award added this year because community colleges have been very creative in trying to get through COVID. And so an innovation award has been added. This is an award that would actually go to a community college, to the Board of Trustees at a community college. And we have a lot of things in the works, so I would ask that you might consider perhaps nominating us for one of the innovations that we may have had. The caveat is that they are looking for colleges that have not only created innovations at their community college, but that they have shared them or inspired other community colleges in the SUNY system. So perhaps you could give that a little thought as well. And I would just mention that the conference is in September, September 23rd, 24th, I believe, in person in Saratoga Springs. Based on the presentation that I heard this evening, I might recommend that we present a paper on the strategic thought presentation that Sarah presented today, that we would do, if you might want to give that a little bit of consideration, Dr. Nye. I know that we don't have a theme yet for the conference, but student success is always part of that mix. So perhaps we might talk about that.
That'd be great. And Cassie's already jumping up and down, and she'll get Sarah excited too, and we'll make it work.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, and I just wanted to mention, I was on the ACCT Northeast Regional meeting this morning, and I just wanted to let you know that Dr. McMenahan, whose name I continue to slur, was also on that call. So I thought that was interesting.
Interesting.
That's great.
Anyone going to Hawaii?
I'm certainly willing to offer.
Yes, there is a leadership conference that is being referred to for trustees that's being held in Hawaii this year.
Oh, boy.
I'm not requesting we spend any funds on that. However, there is an ACCT event in New York City.
Right, later in the year, right? October, November?
In October 20, again, I believe it's the 24th, around that time. I will get you the exact dates, but it is
good.
It is in New York, and we are hoping to have a large presence. And hopefully some of our New York State legislators would be coming to this. It would be a good time for advocacy as well.
But the other that we have to do, Donna, is we originally were presenting at ACCT when COVID hit. So we need to work on, we want panelists. That's something, we're now going to ACCT, which we weren't doing before. Now we
Right.
need to become a panelist and have our own presentation. So we need to work on that.
Okay, I believe that presentations are due May 13th.
Oh, boy.
Really?
That's what I found out this
Because I
morning.
thought with you, I thought it was later.
Submit.
What's that?
Early registration is until August 19th. Hotel registration, the first discount is May 20th. The second discount continues after that for the hotels, but the presentations, whatever you're looking for as far as the paper that you submit, the application is due May 13th, which is next Friday.
Okay, when we did that last time, it was a paragraph.
Yeah,
So
it's
we
not
can do
a-
that. It's too easy.
It's not
Okay.
It's not a lengthy one.
So if we could also, Penny, get that information out that Donna's talked about so that folks that are in a position to make a decision can do so for all the reasons that Donna's indicated. But if the first deadline is May 20th and we can save some money, let's try to do that.
Okay.
Don, anything final? That was a great, nice, full, and splendid report. Questions, Donna?
Thank you. No, I know that we're going to attempt to do more student trustee educational modules through next year. And as soon as I know the date of the next one, we'll certainly contact Sophie and our new trustee, whose name I'm temporarily forgotten. I apologize.
It's Alani.
Alani. Thank you, Alani.
Sorry.
And
There.
we will make sure that you have that information. So if you would like to participate, that might be a nice transition as well.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much for that report, and we look forward to hearing more. Student Court does say rotating trustee, but I believe Trustee Cushman, you've been on point here, and please share if you would.
I've been rotating with it pretty regularly. So the report is in your package. It's just scroll to the end. I think that just to summarize quickly, as I've said all the way along, this has been just a really dynamic group of students. They're terrific what they've been doing. They're in the process of basically wrapping up this year and planning for next year. And they're doing a lot of transition work, which is really encouraging to see. They're very, very professional in what they're doing. And they've spent a lot of time doing things, they've done a lot of work on policies and procedures and updating language and so forth. So they're leaving it better than they found it. And I think that's a real credit to the group and to Jenny and others that help to, Sarah, that are always involved with that group. So that's it.
Thank
Chairman,
you very much.
Questions?
Please, questions. Thank you very much, George. Any final announcements, Penny or Dr. Nye?
Penny?
I don't have anything.
Good here.
Okay. For everyone's benefit, we're going to move to an executive session here. I'm going to read this in a minute, and then we will return to the public portion of the meeting following that executive session. Executive session to discuss matters regarding collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, New York Public Officers Law, Article 7, Section 105, subset E as in Edward. Please, a motion and a second to enter an executive session. A motion, please.
George,
Steve, this is Joan. I move we move into executive session.
Thank you, Joan. And a second.
Second, Barb Hamlin.
Thank you, Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carried. Great. We'll see everyone on the other flip side of that link, and we'll see everyone momentarily. Thank you.
to see
Really?
that.
Oh.
Well,
Oh, there is? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, my mom's had a great 32 years. You know, she's like, okay, this is good. Competition's great.
Well, it's nice on Main Street too, just to see lots of different stores.
Yeah.
It's vibrant, nice. It's
Mhm.
different. We
Yeah.
don't have one of that, you know, in there.
Now they're gonna have two.
Yeah. I know.
Okay, we have all trustees that are virtual and we have those in the boardroom. So any other business to come in front of the Board of Trustees here on May 4th? Seeing none, please a motion to adjourn the meeting.
George, I'll move.
Thank you. And a
Rich,
second.
I'll second.
I second.
Rich, I heard you first. Rich, you second. Thanks very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a pleasant evening, everyone. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
You all probably don't use this as another one of my memes or sayings, but
You need to close that out.
okay. In my previous life, there was saying about there's only two kinds of people in the world, Rich.